Hi, everybody. Thanks for that very kind introduction. It makes me tired listening to all that stuff. My name's Chris. I've been doing these Google Talks now for a long time, but they've become so much more professional and fancy. And there are more people here than there used to be. It used to be me and one Googler just talking about food things in restaurants. So this is the Gaijin Cookbook. It's of all of those numerous cookbooks that we just rattled off, it's the only one I've ever made that you can actually cook from. Everything I've ever made, I apologize if you've bought anything I've ever written. I know that nothing is cookable. It's all very difficult. That's not this book, I promise. Ivan and I go way back. We met probably in 2011 when he was still living in Tokyo. He had a couple of ramen shops there. And if you guys don't know who Ivan is, he is a middle-aged Jewish guy from Long Island who somehow opened 2 super successful ramen shops in Tokyo. And it makes no sense to hear it that way. And like that is the entire story. And it's like the truth of who he is. And he has lived his whole entire life as this outsider. You know, he fell in love with Japanese food as a kid, washing dishes at a restaurant called Subo. The Japanese cooks took him under their wing and just like introduced him to these flavors. And he's just had this crazy lifelong love affair with Japan and Japanese culture. And, as most Asian people would be, I was very skeptical of this white dude who was like super into our stuff. But he's the reason why I wanted to do this book with him, and we had written one book together before, was because he has this very earnest love and very earnest curiosity about Japanese food and Japanese culture, and has studied it rigorously and has like an approach I think that a lot of people could learn from. You know, he isn't sort of just like flying to Tokyo and then coming back and being like, I've heard of these izakaya things and I'm going to open one myself now. He's just not that guy. He's somebody who's like really lived in it. He's raised children there and has a perspective on life as an outsider that I think we could all really appreciate. And this book, it's about cooking, like recipes and cooking at home and feeding your family and your friends and everything. But it's also really about kind of embracing this perspective of an outsider. I think a lot of us travel places and our first sort of Google search is like insider things, and you want to be this kind of local, like a local's guide, and what's the cool stuff that like no tourists see. But to believe that you can travel somewhere and be an insider or a local is just a total fallacy to me. And I think like you have to really understand the value of coming with your own perspective and looking at things respectfully and not trying to pretend that you're something you're not, which is why we chose this title, Gaijin, and which does mean outsider, but in Japanese has more of like a context of intruder or, some kind of like invasive, clumsy white dude stumbling through Japan. Like that's the vibe. It's a little bit of an offensive word. We're not going to get a Japanese translation because of it. I am not Japanese. I should mention that also. I'm Chinese, and so this book is truly from 2 outsiders. But it is, like I said, the first really cookable book I've ever made, and the reason behind that is because Lucky Peach and Mission Chinese and all these projects that I've done in the past are like very much about doing like the most crazy, interesting, out there stuff. And I kind of thumbed my nose at this thing in the past. Like 10 years ago, if you'd asked me if I'd write a book with like a Sushi Ginger-Pizza Bite on a 1-ton skin, I'd be like, that's gross, get the fuck out of here. But I've really, like, since I have a kid now and I have another one coming in 3 hours, I think it's just become much more important to me to really worry about how people actually cook on a day-to-day basis. Does this sync work? And so these recipes are some of them are silly, like the sushi pizza ginger bite is a little ridiculous, but it puts food on the table and it introduces people to these ingredients and these flavors in ways that, I think one thing that happens with Japanese cooking often is it gets put on this very like delicate pedestal, and people think of it as this very effete, mystical art. And what I really wanted to try to convey with our book was that, the Japanese experience entails all the same experiences as an American one. It's hard to put food on the table on a weeknight. You have weekend projects. You are hungover. as I am today, and you have to. There's lots of situations. It's not just all kind of like cooking over open fire by the moonlight and like sipping on the dew of grass or whatever. It's we're all like wherever we are in the world, our cultures are different, but we have the same needs and the same difficulties. And Japan has remarkable approaches for tackling some of these things. If anybody has experience with sort of like Japanese packaged food, like it's incredible. It's like the best food in the world, the best packaged goods, curry blocks and things like that. All of these goods are so useful because, again, the Japanese experience is like, you work really hard, you come home, you have 20 minutes to make a meal. Like, let's just like engineer a way to do it better. So we'll do a few recipes today that are sort of related, unrelated. They're snacky things. We're gonna do a potato salad. That's actually Ivan's wife's recipe. It's a little bit different than other Japanese potato salads. It's Kewpie mayo and all your sort of like typical things, but she does like caramelized onions in there and something else that's different, brown sugar. And then we're gonna make those silly pizza bites, and we'll make some peppers, and then you guys will eat them, and I will drink some water. So I'll do this. Oh, there's my water, or strange colored water. Cool. The water here in South Bay is delicious. What was I saying? Potato salad. We'll start. So we're just gonna. This is what you guys want to hear about, right? How I make this thing. As with many potato salads, you have to cook the potatoes. These are the kinds of insights you can look forward to in the Gaijin Cookbook. Honestly, like if I were doing this at home, and this is a big thing for Ivan and for like Dave Chang, who I do a lot of work with, I would honestly be cooking these potatoes in the microwave. It's just so much faster. It's so much better. But we'll pretend that that's not a thing, and I'll do it in this pot like a schlub. I guess I can do something else in the meantime, right? While we wait for these potatoes to boil.
It's interesting you talk about the microwave. Any tips that you can give all of us is super helpful, because as the Googlers, when they go home, they probably have 15 to 20 minutes to make dinner. So all the tips I think would be super appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, so a microwave, I mean, how many people actually use your microwave to cook and not just heat things up? There you go. See, like I think the microwave is just one of these things, and now I'm just like straight ripping off Dave Chang's spiel, but it's a thing that I think a lot of us have been trained to think of as unhealthy or scary, because like we imagine there are all these like crazy particles coming into our food, and then we're eating the microwave and we're going to become mutants or whatever. But it's like, I mean, you know, you all work at Google, like you're all smart, like it's not what happens. You know, it's like it's vibrating water molecules and heating it up, and it's really just this kind of like fallacy that it's unhealthy. And honestly, when you have kids and you've got like you've got to put dinner on the table, making mashed potatoes in 7 minutes is a godsend. So I'm all about that microwave. So these sushi pizza ginger bites, I'll make this while this potato boils, they're like different kinds of izakayas in Japan. You know, there's the ones that sort of have just like your very straightforward menu. Like you'll see the same things everywhere you go. It's like agedashi tofu and edamame and, you know, grilled fish and things like that. And then you have ones that are like a little more wonky, a little more like chef's getting a little kooky over here, like trying some stuff out. And this recipe is copped from one of the latter kind of izakaya. Ivan's wife went out one night into like, you know, this one of these kookier izakayas and came back and said, he made these like pizzas out of wonton skins and sushi ginger, and like, as Ivan was telling me the story, like my stomach is turning, but like it's kind of a crazy thing. Like we decided, you know, I can't remember if we were intoxicated or not, but probably decided to make this thing. And it's sort of remarkable. Like these things are just, you take a wonton skin out of its normal context of like a dumpling wrapper where you would boil. Instead, you would bake it so it's crispy like a you know, pizza crust. And you'd be surprised at how well cheese and pickled ginger go together. I do think you need to drink a beer when you have one of these things, but it's fine. You guys will be okay. You'll be all right. So it's just a little wonton skin you buy anywhere at any quote unquote Asian market. A little Kewpie mayo, which is does everybody know what Kewpie mayo is? Just mayonnaise with tons of MSG, like the best possible kind of mayonnaise. This is so gnarly. A little salt, a little togarashi, which is basically like a five spice chili powder with like orange peels and I want to say Sichuan pepper or something. This seems to be just red pepper. I made that up. And then cheese. And a few little shreds of this sushi ginger. Oh, thank you. No, my bad. Do you guys all know what katsuobushi is? So this is like one of the more amazing ingredients in the world. It's a bonito fish that's been smoked and then inoculated with Aspergillus oryzae, like a fungus that's responsible for everything good in the world. Dried. It's like a 6-month process basically to make this, but it's the basis, the building block of a lot of Japanese cuisine, including dashi, which is like the foundational broth of Japanese cooking. So a little bit of that on there. And like I've never, again, like bonito is like one of these, or katsuobushi is like one of these ingredients that like I'd only ever known in one context, which was making dashi. But like cooking with Ivan was really interesting to see it used in so many different contexts, whether it was as a topping for something or as, if you make like clay pot of rice or something, and you just crumble up a bunch of katsuobushi and just sprinkle it in there, it'll just dissipate into the broth and make it incredibly flavorful. And then if you put it on hot things, it waves around like it's alive.
So, I mean, I'm fascinated by I'm salivating just by looking at the ingredients.
That cannot be true.
No, listen, and I'll tell you why. And I'm saying this as an American-based chef. What you've got here is you've got the texture that's going to become crispy. You've got the richness from the cheese. You've got the spice. You've got the umami from the fish. Like to you, this is like, oh yeah, no brainer. But like, can you talk through like the intricacies and the importance of all these different components that add to this craveability?
For sure. I think it's a good point because we jokingly call this a pizza bite, and it just goes in the oven until it's crisp. But if you think about pizza, arguably the world's most popular food. It's not just the world's most popular food because it's some sort of anomalous thing. It's all of the things that you want. It's umami from tomatoes and tomato sauce. It's that fat, acidity also from tomatoes, cheese, and then bread. Like these are this like there's not that many ways that like humans learn to love something. Like we only love a few different things. We love a protein, and then like you have like a piece of flatbread, and you have like meat. Like the human nature will bring them together. Like you'll wrap them together. And you think of all the many ways that people wrap meat in bread across the world, from tacos to and then Chinese flatbreads, and every single culture does this basically. And that's essentially like what you're getting to is there's a formula for this to some extent, to sort of pure satisfaction, and it involves starch, fat, acidity, umami, and like a little bit of sweetness. And like that's the exact same formula as a pizza in this very silly form. I don't remember how long this will take.
And then a little bit of spice as well. So one of the things that I was thinking through as I was looking at this, and I'm wondering if you have tips, is how far ahead would you suggest that you could make this? So if you're on a budget, on a schedule, how much would you advise doing ahead versus the last minute of just put it in the oven?
I would not advise making these too far in advance. They don't have like a long life after they come out of there. I think like the longer a Sushi Ginger-Pizza Bite sits at room temperature, the grosser it looks. No, but I think like it's honestly a thing where you could just have your guests make their own too, right? You could just set out the ingredients. It took me 4.5 seconds to make this thing. You can not have the togarashi if you don't want it spicy. You can not have bonito flakes if you're a vegetarian. Otherwise, it's a totally vegetarian dish. And then you just like bake them in batches, right? And they get gobbled up quickly.
So the most important question though, what is the beverage of choice?
The beverage of choice for this is beer.
There you go.
And it's specifically like the best beer in the world is, in my opinion, like an Asahi from the tap. You guys with me on this thing? It's like the greatest thing in the entire world.
Do you know the inspiration on how he came up with this?
Yeah, he was stoned, and his
we
wife
are on YouTube too.
His,
you know that.
His wife, like, it's fine. His kids all know, I think. Sorry, Ivan. Yeah, I mean, like, we were gonna dance around it. It's a 1-ton wrapper with cheese on it. Like, there was only one audience for this dish.
It's starting to smell good.
It is starting to smell okay. I think it's those potatoes. Really, the aroma of these fresh potatoes really taking over the room here. Yeah, so we'll do. Let me check on these potatoes. No, not even close. What else am I making? Peppers, right?
Yep. Grilled peppers.
Okay. This is a dish that's like another super simple thing that we learned when we were in Kyoto researching for this book. We went to this another kind of like izakaya or like kappo restaurant. Do you know what like a kappo restaurant is? It's sort of like somewhere between izakaya, which is a pub, a beer, drinking food type of establishment, and then you have like kaiseki, which is the highly seasonal, very, fine dining, like advanced technique stuff. And kappo is somewhere in between there. It's not, you're still sort of like drinking soju and shochu and beer and eating little bites and plates, but it's not necessarily like junky. It's a little bit raised up. So we went to this place in Kyoto that does this and kind of really specializes in vegetables. It's not vegetarian, but it's like vegetable forward. And we had this dish there where he just, again, it's this thing where if you know a certain amount of Japanese cuisine, like you still compartmentalize what these things are for, and you don't take them out of their context. So shiotare is basically like a base for soups and sauces. It's onions and ginger and oil. It's basically like a sofrito, if you know what that is. And usually it's just a base. It's a flavoring thing that you would use to build a soup or whatever. It's like at the base of every bowl of ramen. But he took just like these beautiful peppers, grilled them, and then just slathered them with shiotare, which was crazy to me and Ivan, who had seen shiotare so many times before, but never in this particular context. As just like a topping. And it's just like another one of these like little discoveries I think is like meaningless if you don't know what any of these dishes are. But for even somebody like Ivan, who has owned ramen shops for years and has been cooking Japanese food and studying Japanese food for, close to 30 years, to see this little thing used in a different context was like a revelation to him. And I think that was really meaningful to us, like in the context of this concept of outsiders and being a gaijin. And I think seeing these things used in ways that we were super unexpected is even more exciting when you allow yourself to be surprised and allow yourself to be ignorant, like not like celebrating your ignorance, but like not pretending that you know anything. And I certainly pretend to know nothing. I do know nothing. I pretend to know anything.
As the grill is heating up, interested to hear, if the audience has questions, it's total collaborative. But as
yes, talk to me.
Talk to you. As you were putting the book together, what was some of the most exciting as well as the most terrifying and or surprising moments? Because I can imagine the journey of putting a book together, not just by yourself, but in collaboration with another individual, probably had led to some interesting stories.
Yeah, I think that the first book I wrote with Ivan was about his life story. And I'd never met him. I'd never been to Japan, and I'd never tasted like a proper bowl of ramen. And I signed on to write a book about it, all three of those things. And I met him for the first time at Narita Airport and had no idea what to expect. And that was probably the scariest moment of doing any book I've ever done, which is like, oh, you're really desperate for money, huh? Like, you need to do this book with this guy you've never met about a subject you have no idea about. But happily, we got along really well. And I think there's never been a moment since then where I have felt, and it's like a very unique relationship to have this kind of collaboration with a chef where because he's a little older than, he's not like a 23-year-old kid trying to like translate his 3 Michelin star cooking to a cookbook. He's he's seen more. He like understands more. Like we connect on in a way, and he's very well read. He's a great writer on his own. He's an okay writer on his own. Sorry, Ivan, you're fine. And like we just since that first meeting, we haven't had a single moment where we weren't able to talk and see eye to eye. And like I'm burning these for sure. No, I'm not. Look at that. Fuck. Perfect. I'm good. Yeah, I think that the scary moment was when we shot this whole book in Sebastopol in Sonoma County at my in-laws' house. But it was me, Ivan, our photographer, our stylist, assistants, 3 dogs, and my in-laws. No wife, just me and the gang and my in-laws hanging out. That was a scary moment for sure. But I'm gonna throw this over here, guys, because it's hot. I don't want to burn Google to the ground. Yeah, but otherwise, I think we had some fears. To be like totally honest with you, like the title of this book, Gaijin Cookbook, is like a little bit. It's a little dicey. I think in like anybody in Japan, a lot of like our Japanese friends were kind of iffy about us doing that. It's not. I'm trying to think of like an American equivalent, like a book that would be offensive. It'd be like if you made a book of like cooking in RVs and you called it like the Cracker Ass Cookbook or something. I don't know, like something like that is equivalent.
Are you getting challenged on the book title at all?
No, because what I'm saying is like I was nervous about that, and also like it's just like it's a very difficult time to celebrate this notion. And I'm sure if any of you sort of follow food media or care about food media, like it's a very challenging time for anybody to be cooking the food of somebody else's culture, and I think for good reason. There's a long history of exploitation, and it can drag up a lot of hurts for people when you cook food that's quote unquote not yours. I think we did the book because of that. We did this book because we wanted to provide a different perspective on that. But there's plenty of room to be misinterpreted or or that maybe we didn't see everything. And if I had one big fear about this book, it would be that people would see this and think, oh, cool. Well, just what we needed, like a Chinese guy and a white dude telling us how to cook Japanese food. Thankfully, I think people have been receptive and understood what we're trying to do here, and that it's specifically about talking about this issue and not skirting around it or just everyone. I think there's like a real problem if everybody just kind of, you stick to your lane.
Correct. Right?
Like there's exploitation on one side, there's the other side is, that's not me, I don't want to learn anything about that, I don't want to do that, and it's taken a lot for me to kind of come around to, seeing somebody who's not Chinese cook Chinese food and understanding that like the alternative is them not trying and not wanting to.
I mean, our program can relate to that because we are extremely diverse, not only in the food that we offer, but obviously all of our user base, and most of our chefs, especially here based in the Bay Area, most of them are American or based here in America, and they haven't traveled around the world as much as we would love to. So when we start doing interpretations of food, we're doing our best effort. If we haven't been there, if we haven't seen the food, it's a very similar opportunity. And sometimes it goes over well, and other times we get challenged. But either way, we learn from it. So we can definitely relate. That looks really good, by the way.
You should use that one.
I think I just might. I'm interested in the audience, just a raise of hands. How many people like to cook at home, just in general, like to cook? So probably like everyone in the room. How many people cook, I would say, at least once a week at home? Oh, so almost everyone here. Okay, great. Wait, well, our work is done here. When before we opened the teaching kitchens, a quick funny story, and this is one of the reasons why we started opening the teaching kitchens, is we found that with a program like Google that we offer, where it's breakfast, lunch, dinner provided, there were many users coming to us, employees that came right out of college that just weren't cooking. And I remember one day someone actually came up to me and gave me a hug after we had been closed for 2 weeks and said, "Thank you. So glad you're back here cooking," because I was kind of fending for myself for a couple of weeks. So it's great to see that you're much further along than that individual. So if we have questions on anything at all, just start raising your hand or shout it out, because I think this is the time to pick Chris's brain on anything you ever wanted to know about the building of this book, the recipes themselves, and the journeys that he went through. Oof. And how many times he can embarrass Ivan on camera.
Yeah, for sure. So this is when I sort of half jokingly say I've never made a book that you can cook from. It usually boils down not to skill level. Anybody can sort of figure it out. whether it's just by your instruction or looking it up online. We can all get the skills necessary, but it always comes down to pantry. And when I did the Mission Chinese book, I almost wanted to write in the beginning, like, don't cook anything in this book unless you're going to cook Chinese food exclusively for 4 months, because nobody wants to buy a jar of fermented black beans to use half a teaspoon and then just have it in their fridge for 6 years, right? Nobody needs that. I think that a big thing with this book, and a big thing with home cooking for us was specifically addressing that. And I think we avoided things where there's no like yuzu kosho in here. There's no like any like kind of crazy ingredients that you're gonna use one little tiny spoonful of and never use again. This is all, it's katsuobushi, it's kombu seaweed, lots of Kewpie mayo, soy sauce, mirin, and sake, and you can do 85% of the recipes with just that. And fortunately, at this point, all of those things, whether they're available at, you know, a grocery store, like a mainstream grocery store or not, like you can order a bag of katsuobushi online, and it's like, it's pretty simple. And like the big test for me was like my mother-in-law, my like white mother-in-law from Western Massachusetts, like had no trouble sourcing these things and using them. And I think like here in the Bay Area, there's gonna be no trouble at all. And like I said, the more you cook with these things, the more it's gonna occur to you to use them elsewhere. You know, like I don't want any of these ingredients to feel like they should go in your drawer labeled like Japanese shit, like only open in case of, you know, emergency. Like they should enter like your daily lexicon, you know. Like I think I hope that like that's the case, because these are incredible tools for umami and sweetness and richness. Like all of these ingredients can be used so many different ways.
So if I was to go to your place and look in your pantry of shelf-stable items, what would be the 5 ingredients that you would say would most likely always be there? And you may recommend, to the question of what to stock in the pantry, your preference.
Katsuobushi is huge. I actually use a lot of, whether it's Korean or Japanese, like sometimes I don't feel like making dashi. Dashi is the kombu and katsuobushi broth. Sometimes I don't feel like making it, so I actually rely on the tea bags a lot. My pantry is currently chock full of Momofuku seasoned salts. It's a real,
that counts.
You just open it up,
Salt's
it looks like
yeah.
I should be getting paid for product placement in there. Can I have a plate?
Yeah.
Thank you. What else? Weird hot sauces, my jam. All these. So there's a recipe in this book for this thing called, do you guys all know what chili crisp is? This has become popular in recent years. It's basically hot sauce that you can eat with a spoon, more or less. And in Japanese, it's tabaru ryu. And we've got, I saw it at Trader Joe's recently, which is when I knew the world was ending, that you could buy sort of like chili crisp at Trader Joe's or whatever.
I bought it last week.
Did you really? Or whatever brand they sell their Asian stuff under, Trader Wong's or whatever the fuck they say. Yeah, that's my thing. What are we doing? Am I almost done with this?
You're making great time.
I know. So
I
peppers,
love the
by the way,
simplicity here. This is great.
you guys were asking what dishes to cook, and these ones are hilariously easy to cook.
Did you pick these dishes? That was my other question while you're plating that up. Did you pick these dishes because of the simplicity, or was there something personal about these that you wanted to highlight?
It's a great question. Well, I know that there's like a real, focus here on kind of healthier things. Vegetables, but not vegetarian, I think is my jam. Fish sauce goes into literally everything I make, except for this. But like for me, these are simple little things that you can eat in like an environment like this. Like that was like a big chapter of this book is sort of entertaining and eating. And I think like we owe so much to, you know, Asian cultures when it comes to like the integration of eating and drinking together. You know, it's like it's not this super formalized kind of this wine goes with this course and like you have to do this way and this way. And I think I don't know if people like remember that maybe 20 years ago, going out to dinner wasn't a thing that you would go like do with your friends and just like drink beers and have wine and do this very casual thing that like mimics the way people eat and drink in Asia. Like going out and dining was this formalized experience. Like it was that or it was takeout. And I think a huge thing with this book was sort of like appreciating like how advanced the art of eating and drinking is. Like people just like know how to do it. And like this restaurant that we were inspired by for this. Nobody will eat these potatoes. I overcooked the shit out of them. What was like one of these restaurants in Kyoto was like a great example of it, and why I kind of wanted to show this recipe in particular. And the potato salad. Everybody likes potato salad, I think. Somebody else asked me a question. I have nothing else to say to you guys.
Yeah, in the front.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about the nonprofit you started?
The nonprofit.
Sure. So the nonprofit, I started with a couple of friends. One of which is the chef Anthony Mint, who was one of the co-founders at Mission Chinese and the Perennial in San Francisco and Mission Street Food. And basically, we went to really quickly. So I'm going to boil these carrots in the same water because I hate doing dishes. We went to this symposium in Copenhagen called MAD, which is this chef gathering. And it's very much just like, it's not your typical chef gathering. There's no tastings and like, you don't like wear a little empty glass of wine around your neck and get that kind of thing happening. It was, it's about ideas and solutions. And we saw this, how motivated people got by doing good things with food. And this was like a really eye-opening experience for me to see chefs who, not in like an overt, like, I'm feeding you all scraps or whatever, but just like they cared about things beyond themselves and like genuinely cared. And Anthony's whole philosophy has always been that like you can get people to pay too much for food pretty easily. Like people just will. They won't question it. If you ask them to give you $5 for a charity, like they will absolutely not do it. But they like will not blink an eye if their, salmon dish is $22 instead of $19. And so we left this thing thinking we should start something that helps restaurants deal with climate change, because this is the issue that keeps us up at night. This was what freaks us out. And I think that a lot of people who work in restaurants already have an assumption about their own business that it's terrible for the environment, that like cooking and selling food is not a good thing for the environment, but which is just not, it's patently not true. So we did a study essentially assessing the carbon footprint of a restaurant meal, a meal at Noma, and a home cooked meal. And the Noma meal was higher, of course. They have 40 different deliveries coming to them every day. It's a 35 course meal, whatever. The home cooked meal and the restaurant meal were very close. And what was inspiring about, or what was what made us optimistic about all of it was that none of them were actually so egregious. None of the carbon emissions of any of these meals was so egregious that you couldn't eliminate it pretty easily. And long story short, like your average restaurant meal could be completely carbon neutral for like 40 cents a diner. And so like this was the sort of basis for Zero Foodprint, which was helping restaurants first understand the dynamics that create emissions. Red meat is huge. Feedlot beef is the hugest thing, but it comes down to like the ingredients and your processes and your energy sources, and helping people just understand those to make decisions. We're not interested at all in converting a steakhouse to a vegetarian restaurant. Like that's just unrealistic and not going to work. But if we start paying attention to where our food comes from, we help our farmers with soil health, which is critical to sort of carbon sequestration. Like we could really make a difference. And if we can do so without boring the hell out of everybody talking about this stuff, if it's just built into the way restaurants operate, then wouldn't it be cool? Our essential question was like, wouldn't it be cool if the best thing you could do for the environment was to go out and eat at a restaurant that you liked? Not like give money to it, not go plant a tree somewhere, just like go eat at a restaurant that you like. And that would be the best thing you could do. And I think we're not far away from like that exact goal. So that's, oh shit, I need to cook these onions. That's the nonprofit. Right now, its only limitation has ever been my time. Anthony and his wife Karen have dedicated themselves fully to this thing and recently partnered with the state of California. California as a state has made soil health a priority and committed funds to it. And Zero Foodprint, this silly nonprofit we started in an airport hungover, is now like managing that whole process for the state. So like that tells you how little people know if they're like giving us the power to do it. But that's the nonprofit.
As you're mixing up the potatoes, what are a couple of tips from your work with Zero Foodprint that you would maybe suggest to whether it's the home chef or the folks that are going out to restaurants? Is it just asking those key questions, or?
Yeah, well, it's, I think that there's a lot of advocacy you can do as a consumer, right? Like thinking about like what the types of places you want to support in any situation, right? Whether it's because of the kind of people who work there, how they treat their employees, how they do their food, whatever. But really there are only a few things. You can care about where you're eating, pay attention to the type of restaurant you want to support. There are a lot of Zero Foodprint restaurants now. And the other thing is like meat or like beef is rough for the environment. Like there's not really a way to get around that. And I think for a variety of reasons, sort of the way we eat meat is problematic, not just from an environmental perspective, but like when you were a kid, like a steak dinner meant something, right? Like it was an occasion. You were celebrating this thing. Going even further back than that, meat was a rarity. You had to kill an animal to get it, right? And so like you used meat constantly. Now you can go to Costco and buy 640 steaks for $7 and have steak whenever you want. And I think like that is not only putting the environmental stuff aside, it also kind of takes some of the meaning away from this food, right? Like you don't care as much about it. It doesn't mean as much to you when you can just get it whenever you want. And like that's the essential problem, right? The essential problem for everything, whether it comes to like why we don't appreciate certain foods enough or why these things are killing the planet, is because like we all sort of want to be able to have anything we want whenever we want. And I eat supermarket sushi all the time. Like I'm gross. So I'm not like judging anybody about this, but I'm saying, like this is the reason why things are tough, is because I think we don't understand that like foods arose in certain places for a certain reason, and they actually are best enjoyed in those contexts.
Yeah, I mean the access to beef or other land proteins is so easy at this point, and it wasn't so 100 years ago. The portion sizes have obviously doubled since maybe 100 years ago, and what your message is essentially just to be mindful of that and moderate and balance it.
Yes. Yeah, it's not. I'm not trying to like be like lecturing about it. It's interesting because like this next season we have a season of Ugly Delicious coming out on March 6th, and one of the big topics in this season is steak. And like this is where has informed a lot of my thinking about steak, which is just it is a thing where like if you can have something every single day, like you just don't really care about it anymore. And like that's sort of what has happened with steak. Like you want to eat a gigantic steak, you want to be able to eat it whenever you want, and for that reason, like steak gets a little worse, and you can't enjoy it as much. Also, we kill Earth. Really quick, this is the potato salad recipe. It's Ivan's wife's recipe. She likes to mash-ish, just half of the potatoes and then add the other half, so there's like still a little bit of textural variety. As I mentioned, I overcooked the hell out of these, and so they're all going to be pretty mushy. But you're not eating this batch, so that's fine.
The magic of television.
And then just caramelizing onions in butter, which will take too long, I think.
One of the best tricks when you're entertaining is just do what he's doing at home for like a minute, and everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my god, it smells amazing!" You're like, "It was one onion and a little butter."
Totally, exactly. I'm just gonna start putting together because they're not gonna eat this, and it's fine. I'm just gonna be super hacky. Okay, mash half the potatoes, brown sugar, I think, a little salt, a little bit of rice vinegar. Let's pretend I caramelized these onions super well and I didn't just char a bunch of them. Let's just pretend that happened. And then these little very nicely sliced carrots, guys. Amazing job, these carrots. Kewpie mayo.
I actually appreciate the idea of using the same pot for the potatoes and the carrots, because it's at the end of the day, if you are a home chef, whoever your partner is doesn't like you very much if you've got thousands of dishes. So nice work.
Dishwashing falls on me also in addition to the cooking. So my entire life is about reducing the number of dishes I use. I'll cook for 3 days out of one pot. No, I won't do that. And then just a little bit actually of this like potato cooking water to keep things a little looser. And everything is so hot. It's so gnarly in here. But that's it. That's potato salad. Potato salad in Japan is everywhere. As a side for things, as like a thing to pick up at the convenience store, as an ingredient for sandwiches. Like it's just everywhere. And it's another thing where in America, I think like we restrict our potato salad consumption to July 4th. But like, why would you do that? Like potato salad is the fucking best. Like you got to eat this whenever you can.
The sweet, sour, caramelized onion that I can smell up here looks amazing. We're going to get you a plate in 1 second.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of vegetarian recipes in this book. But the one, there's no fish sauce in this book, actually. That's just my psychotic thing. The one stumbling block is always the bonito flakes. It's basically the only non-vegetarian thing in across most of the dishes, but we have a vegetable dashi recipe in there that kind of substitutes in. The only thing you miss really is that smokiness, because you can make up for the umami with mushrooms and all sorts of other ingredients, but you don't get the smoke from the katsuobushi. But that's the only one. And there's like I said, a vegetable broth in there. What's my go-to? It's funny because, like I said, not only is this like the only book that you can cook from this fucking mound of potatoes. That's
his lunch.
Like incredible plating job here. Voila! Look at that thing. I didn't consider how ugly that was going to be when I said I would
Isn't
make
cooking
that
so
one.
glamorous?
No, it's the book. It's ridiculous. Like it's embarrassing how much I cook from this book. We do during like the winter months. There's a lot of like the donabe recipes, which are just like clay pots, but you can do them in any sort of vessel. But we make a lot of tanjiro, which is like a ginger pork belly miso stew. We do a lot of the rice like clay pots with fish, and we'll do that at least once a week. And then the thing that has like changed my life entirely is Ivan's approach to curry. So 100% there's a from scratch curry recipe in this thing if you're an idiot and you want to use that one. But like the curry blocks that you can buy at a Japanese market are incredible. You throw them into broth and it's suddenly curry. And like it's actually super vegetarian friendly too. I have a vegetarian friend who uses this nonstop. But Ivan will braise 5 pounds of pork shoulder in dashi, break it into quart containers, and then freeze it. And then so rather than just using water as your base, you have pork broth. So you just like defrost your pork shoulder with this like unbelievable liquid that's dashi and porky, and then use that as the base for your curry, add your vegetables, a little bit of honey, a little bit of milk, and it's like you have this ridiculous bowl of Japanese curry like any day of the week in 20 minutes. It's I'm not like a hacky guy. I'm pretty hacky, but like it's an amazing food hack.
Sounds like my go-to. Couple more questions. There's one in the back there. Yes.
When it's like in the book and it says like this will last for up to whatever. How do we decide? It's very scientific. I put it in my refrigerator. I look at it every day and say, would somebody who's not me eat this? And if the answer is no, then it's basically that. No, I think that it is more or less not a scientific thing. It's more or less that. Like I think for us, we always err on the side. It's just like a sell by date for milk. You always sort of err on the side of less time. Like I grew up in a household where like we didn't put our leftovers in the fridge. We just like left them out on the stove and heated them up again until they were just like mush. The stove kills everything, but I don't say that in here. Like generally it is that, like, because Ivan and I personally cooked and tested every single one of these recipes over and over again. And it was very much a matter of like, label it, put it in my fridge, check it. Okay, it's like not as good as it would be. Usually these things, most of the time it's not about like rot or like it's unsafe or anything. It's mostly like if I'm telling you to make a component 3 days in advance, but I know it's going to be worse 3 days later, it's not going to taste as good, like I won't recommend that you do that.
So when in doubt, just a sniff test, right?
Just a sniff test, come on.
Yeah, we get the question a lot as well. And if you're cooking in larger batches, then that changes because you have a larger amount of food that needs to cool
Absolutely.
quicker. So.
And there's like all sorts of like real food safety things to be concerned with. And, I recognize that like I'm in the minority of people when it comes to food safety. I think a lot of people have like real valid concerns about, like throw that out. It's not good. Like I have friends who, their power will go out for like 25 minutes and they'll just throw everything in the fridge out. And I'm like, okay, like I would eat that, but fine.
Both.
But I understand like people have different.
Sure. It's a great question.
Yeah. The book, God, probably 18 to 24 months of just like actively working on it. And the process was interesting. Ivan lives in New York. He lives, I'm going to say upstate. I don't know anything about New York geography, but he doesn't live in the city. And I live in San Francisco. And so it was a lot of me, just like a lot of us just talking through the types of recipes we want to do, him testing them, writing them down in his like crazy chicken scratch. And then his like sort of like, sorry, Ivan, like old man scanning techniques where like half the page was cut off most of the time. I know just every file was 700 megabytes and me having to get these things and like interpret it. But there was a lot because like I cooked professionally. Ivan has like we have like a mutual respect for one another's cooking. There was a lot of him doing it in his isolated kitchen, me doing it on the opposite coast with opposite ingredients, and then saying like, this didn't work at all. This could be better. Why don't we add this? Your cook time here is ridiculous. Nobody can caramelize onions in 35 seconds, like that sort of thing. It was just like a lot. And like, I'm very thankful for our relationship because we could really push each other in that way. And nobody was going to be offended if I said like, hey, this recipe is utter bullshit. Like you just made this up, So it's unique in that way, in that he's a high profile chef, and like most high profile chefs don't cook at home. And like he cooked these at home and fed them to his family. I cooked them in my home, fed them to my family. And so like, it's very honest in that way. There's nothing that you can't buy in America at this point, really, but the sort of range of quality in Japan is much broader. So, you buy katsuobushi here, you're kind of restricted to what you find at the store. And even at the Japanese market, there's 4 or 5 different brands, but you go to Japan, you go to a shop that's just wall to walls, floor to ceiling, different kinds of dried fish flakes. And so you lack that a little bit. You don't get like the kind of top tier. But the thing is like, you don't need any of that really to do this. Other ingredients in Japan were like, again, like the packaged food things are amazing, but like none of them show up in this book except for the curry blocks, which you can buy, probably at Safeway. But yeah, it's mostly not about ingredients you can't get at all. It's just about like, you can't get the crazy version of it here. You can't buy like, you guys know about like Japanese fruit? You can buy like a square watermelon and like a peach that's like $84, and even that stuff is coming. I had strawberries. I had an 8-pack of strawberries that was $50 the other day. So that stuff's coming too. Thank God. We can all pay so much for our fruit soon.
The perfect peach. Well, thank you again for coming in. Huge round of applause for Chris.